Once upon a time, in the landscape of modern American business, there was a unicorn that shone brighter than all the others. It was a company that promised not just to rent desks, but to elevate the world's consciousness. It was a story that began with a revolutionary vision and ended in a smoking crater of destroyed value. We are talking, of course, about WeWork and its charismatic, enigmatic, and ultimately controversial co-founder, Adam Neumann. To understand the magnitude of this collapse, we have to rewind the clock. We have to go back to a time before the bankruptcy headlines, before the lawsuits, and before the cautionary tales. We have to go back to the beginning, when WeWork was not a punchline, but a phenomenon. The year was 2010. The global economy was just dusting itself off from the Great Recession. In this climate of uncertainty, two men, Adam Neumann and Miguel McKelvey, saw an opportunity. They looked at the traditional office, drab, gray, isolated, full of cubicles and fluorescent lights, and they decided it was obsolete. They didn't just want to be landlords, they wanted to be community builders. Their pitch was seductive in its simplicity and its grandeur. They weren't selling square footage, they were selling a lifestyle. They were selling a community. Imagine walking into an office and being greeted not by a security guard, but by a barista, free beer on tap, neon signs shouting inspirational mantras, and a buzzing hive of freelancers and startups. This was the WeWork promise. It was about collaboration, it was about energy, and at the center of it all was Adam Neumann. An Israeli-American businessman, Neumann was the engine of this machine. He was often described as a visionary, a man with a magnetic personality who could walk into a room of skeptical investors and walk out with millions of dollars. He convinced the world that WeWork wasn't a real estate company, which traditionally trades at low multiples, but a technology company, a platform that deserved a valuation to rival Silicon Valley's giants. And for a long time, the world believed him. The company expanded rapidly, planting its flag in cities across the globe, growing its footprint at a breakneck pace that left competitors in the dust. It seemed like nothing could stop the momentum of the WeWork revolution. As WeWork's footprint expanded, so did its hunger for capital. You cannot build a global empire of prime real estate on charisma alone. You need cash, and you need billions of it. Enters SoftBank and its legendary leader, Masayoshi Son. This relationship would become the defining chapter in WeWork's rise to the stratosphere. Masayoshi Son is known for making massive bets on the future, and in Adam Neumann, he saw a kindred spirit, a founder with a vision as grand as his own. SoftBank poured fuel on the fire. We're talking about an investment that exceeded $10 billion. At one point, there were even discussions of investing as much as $16 billion. This wasn't just funding, this was anointing a king. With SoftBank's backing, WeWork's valuation skyrocketed. By early 2019, the company was valued at an astronomical $47 billion. Let that number sink in. $47 billion. It made WeWork one of the most valuable startups in the United States. But with this influx of cash came a pressure to grow that bordered on the absurd. Neumann's vision began to expand beyond office walls. It wasn't enough to change how people worked, he wanted to change how they lived and learned. We saw the birth of WeLive, a venture into co-living apartments, and WeGrow, an educational initiative for children. These weren't just side projects, they were manifestations of a belief that the We brand could encompass every aspect of human existence. Neumann's rhetoric became increasingly messianic. He spoke of elevating the world's consciousness. He reportedly told colleagues that he wanted to become president of the world, that he wanted to live forever, and even harbored ambitions of putting a WeWork location on Mars. To the outside world, this looked like the confidence of a genius, but inside the boardroom, the lines between visionary ambition and unchecked vanity were beginning to blur. The company was spending money as fast as SoftBank could print it, prioritizing growth over profitability at every turn. The belief was that if they captured the market, the profits would eventually follow. It was a strategy of blitzscaling taken to its absolute extreme, and as long as the valuation kept climbing, nobody asked the hard questions. But the music was about to stop. The turning point came in April 2019. WeWork, riding high on its $47 billion valuation, decided it was time to go public. They filed their initial public offering paperwork, known as the S-1. In the business world, the S-1 is a moment of truth. It is when a private company must open its books to the public, laying bare its financials, its risks, and its governance structure. For WeWork, the S-1 was not a debutante ball, it was an autopsy performed on a living patient. When investors and analysts finally got a look at the numbers, the reaction was immediate and visceral shock. Beneath the glossy veneer of community and consciousness, the company was hemorrhaging cash. In 2018 alone, WeWork reported a loss of $1.9 billion on just $1.8 billion in revenue. In the first half of 2019, they lost another $690 million. The business model, it turned out, was spending $2 to make $1. But the financial losses were only half the story. The prospectus revealed a corporate governance structure that was essentially a monument to Adam Neumann's power and self-interest. It was a governance nightmare. First, there was the dual-class stock structure. Neumann held shares that gave him 20 times the voting power of an ordinary shareholder. This meant that no matter what happened, no matter how much money other people put in, Adam Neumann controlled the company. He was effectively unfireable by normal means. Then came the revelations of self-dealing. It came to light that Neumann had personally owned buildings that he then leased back to WeWork, effectively acting as both the landlord and the tenant, profiting on both sides of the deal. But perhaps the most damaging revelation, the one that became the symbol of the company's hubris, was the trademark issue. Neumann had trademarked the word "we." He then sold the rights to that trademark to his own company, WeWork, for nearly $6 million. Let me repeat that. He sold the word "we" to his own company for millions. Although he eventually returned the money after a public outcry, the damage was done. It painted a picture of a CEO who was treating a public-facing company as his personal piggy bank. Reports of his lifestyle only added fuel to the fire. There were stories of a $60 million private jet bought for the company, used for his travels. There were allegations of erratic behavior, including smoking marijuana on private planes. The image of the disciplined, visionary leader shattered, replaced by that of a reckless spender with The reaction to the S-1 filing was catastrophic. Wall Street looked at WeWork and collectively said no. The valuation, which had stood proudly at $47 billion, began to freefall. In a matter of weeks, it plummeted to less than $10 billion. The IPO, once expected to be the blockbuster event of the year, was shelved. The pressure on the board, and specifically on SoftBank, became unbearable. It became clear that WeWork could not go public and perhaps could not even survive with Adam Neumann at the helm. On September 24, 2019, the inevitable happened. Adam Neumann resigned as CEO. He relinquished his majority voting control, stepping down from the pedestal he had built. But if you think this is where the bad guy gets punished, think again. This is where the story takes its most controversial turn. SoftBank, desperate to salvage its massive investment, stepped in with a bailout package. They took an 80% stake in the company and injected another $5 billion in financing. But to get Neumann to leave quietly, they had to pay him, and they paid him a fortune. Neumann's exit package was initially reported to be worth around $1.7 billion. This included nearly $1 billion for his shares, a $185 million consulting fee to be paid over 4 years, and a $500 million credit line. While thousands of WeWork employees faced layoffs and watched their stock options become worthless, the man who steered the ship into the iceberg was walking away a billionaire. Corporate governance experts were aghast, calling it a king's ransom for grossly mismanaging the company. Although the package was later renegotiated in 2021 to a slightly smaller but still massive sum of roughly $500 million in cash and stock, the bitter taste remained. The company he left behind was broken. Despite SoftBank's efforts to restructure, the damage was deep. Then came the COVID-19 pandemic, which emptied offices around the world and struck a hammer blow to WeWork's business model. Who needs a shared desk during a global lockdown? The company tried to limp forward. They eventually went public via a SPAC merger in 2021, but at a valuation of just $9 billion, a fraction of its peak. It wasn't enough. The debt, the expensive leases, and the changed world were too much to overcome. In November 2023, WeWork filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The stunning downfall was complete. The company that wanted to elevate the world's consciousness ended up as a case study in bankruptcy court. The story of WeWork and Adam Neumann stands today as a stark monument to the dangers of easy money, the cult of the founder, and the peril of believing that a charismatic vision can replace the fundamental laws of business gravity. It is a reminder that when value is detached from reality, the collapse is not just possible, it is inevitable.